Welcome to Movie Bitches.
Happy Halloween.
Oh, happy Halloween.
It's just a regular Friday night. That's all,
Yeah, exactly. Just dress like this big, large stuffed animal all the time.
I think I should wear all the hats. Should I just wear all of the hats? I think I
just
should wear
all
them
hats?
all.
I love that.
But seriously, what do you think? Or should I wear them all? Maybe I should just wear all the hats.
I like wearing a Halloween costume that was a meme or a viral sensation.
Oh my God. I know what I should do. Britney Spears, can you save us?
Can't you save us, Britney Spears? Can we be saved? God, why is Satan controlling the universe?
Like a steering
just
wheel.
Make
and
yourself a steering wheel and just, yes.
And then just have like a little speaker strapped to my back where it's just blasting. You want a hot buddy? You want a Bugatti?
What now?
Anyway, welcome to Hitchcocktober! Yay!
Woo! We decided this year to do a month-long dissertation on Hitchcock.
Celebration.
Oh, yes. I mean, controversial figure, complicated man, flawed person, excellent filmmaker. We're going to run the gamut. I think it'll be an interesting conversation to have. Let's get into it. I'm excited to talk about Hitchcock and all of his fabulous female collaborators and male collaborators, but mostly the female collaborators.
Mostly, yeah. But first things first, shout out to our Patreon supporters. $5 a month gets you early access. $10 gets you access to our viewing parties. And more, we're going to think about different ideas of ways to shake things up. So let us know what benefits you would like in the comments.
I'm just realizing now that the stripes on your head look like some sort of melted mustache. And it's really making me laugh.
I feel like they look like I'm related to Eugene Levy.
Oh, or very Peter Gallagher. Yes.
Yes, very Peter Gallagher. Second thing second, shout out to our wine sponsor, Wink. Go to trywink.com/moviebitches. You get $22 off your first month of wine or cider. It's always good for the holidays. I like to point that one out,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Orange wine.
That would have been perfect for this outfit. What are you going to do? Third things third, make sure to subscribe, share. Oh, now that would also be a good costume for me to try and do, is just get a Cher wig and some beaded outfit and an original Bob Mackie.
I'm excited. You're getting into it.
See, that's the problem, though. I always get into the ideas, and then when it comes to the execution, I'm like, no, too much effort. I don't care.
Well, I'm excited because I've got multiple more costumes coming, and they're more niche than the next.
Love it, and I will continue to phone it in.
Maybe you just bring a receiver, just a phone, and say, "What's your costume?" I phoned it in.
I could do like a giant boombox strapped around my crotch, and then I could have nothing but the radio on. Well, it's a famous thing. I think Marilyn Monroe. Oh, I had nothing but the radio on.
Oh!
So then nothing but the radio on. And it's like a slutty Halloween costume, but also like an old-timey niche reference that some people might not even get. Oh, I had nothing but the radio on, I don't know why I turned into Mickey Mouse, but...
it works. It happens. Anyway,
yeah.
Cheers to Hitchcocktober Part 1. Today we are doing Hitchcock and Camp, and we are reviewing Stage Fright from 1950 and Marnie from 1964.
Oh, boy.
I wanted to highlight the less talked about Hitchcock movies because everyone talks about Vertigo and Rear Window and Psycho, and those are great movies. But I think there's something more interesting about talking about the lesser known masterworks and that sort of stuff. So, here we go.
I do feel like I might throw a curveball in here and say that we should still do The Birds for like actual Halloween, just because like you gotta do I know you don't love it.
I do not love The Birds. I do not care much for that film. Although I do think that might have been the first Hitchcock movie that I saw.
Mine too.
So, it's the most famous,
right.
I think.
Well,
even though Psycho's more whatever, but The Birds is like the movie that you're allowed to watch, Like, I wasn't, like, watching Psycho in middle school, but the Birds,
No.
yeah, you know.
Birds, I was like 8 years old and it was on, and my dad was like, now this movie. And I was like, oh, okay. That's honestly actually maybe the only time I've seen it. But anyway, I appreciate your approach to this because it's like, what are we going to add about Psycho that hasn't been said ad nauseum? You know, it's like there's a million documentaries and this and that and whatever. Who's talking about Marnie? We are, and I'm excited to get into it because I have a lot of things to say.
We'll get into it. I feel like we should talk about stage fright first, just because I feel like Marnie's going to be a lengthier discussion. But I really wanted to talk about Marnie because people don't. And I find it to be one of the most fascinating, complicated, complex, problematic, flawed masterworks, question mark, all over the place. Sure. We will get into it.
Yes.
But first and foremost, I think we should talk about Marlene Dietrich.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And Edith Head. Now I will say Edith Head did costumes for both.
No, not for stage fright.
Oh, she didn't?
But Christian Dior did all of Marlene Dietrich's costumes.
That's right. That's right. And all of her outfits were spectacular. And now that's interesting because I was like torn. Were the outfits better in Marnie or were they better in Stage Fright? And I kind of thought that the outfits in Stage Fright were so fabulous.
Well, I think they were fabulous because of Marlene Dietrich, let's say that. Like she
elevated them.
Was, not to take anything away from Tippi Hedren, but the outfits were her fabulosity, you know. Oh, can we make this more plunging, maybe?
Right!
I don't want to be depressed. It's so depressing. Ugh.
Now get me out of these weeds. I'm beginning to feel sad, and I shouldn't feel sad. It's so depressing.
So the costumes are more also integral to the plot because it is literally about her stage performances, her costumes. The opening scene is about, you know, switching out a dress. So there's lots more going on. I mean, we'll talk about the costumes in Marnie as well, but I know what you mean. And I think perhaps Dior is more glamour, where Edith Head is more just not industrial, but just like perfect. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, that's just the perfect suit that was cut for perfection. Great. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so fabulous. This is going to be all over the place. We're going to talk about all of them, but I watched this video with Tippi Hedren in 2019, I want to say, because she's still alive and fabulous, by the way. It was like, would you still wear this? And they gave her all these pictures of, oh, what about this outfit? What about this outfit?
And you know what? I could fit into that today. That's what's the best about it, I think. That was one of Edith Head's most beautiful designs.
And her response to all of them was like, I would wear that in a heartbeat. And I can still fit into it.
I can still wear this outfit. And I just might bring it out again.
I was just like, yes, bitch!
I love that. Oh my God, this is driving me crazy. I'm sorry. It's coming off.
Now you're Friar Tigger.
Friar Tigger.
It's all good.
Good. Yeah.
It's great.
It's Robin Hood and Tigger in one. Robin Hood of the 100 Acre Woods, right?
Yeah, of course. Before we get into the details of each movie, I would recommend them both. Obviously, I picked them. I think that they are both fantastic for different reasons, or at least entertaining and interesting to dissect and all of the above. What about you? Would you recommend them?
I loved Stage Fright. I would certainly recommend it.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I really had a great time. Like, I would say in many ways, Stage Fright is the type of movie that are like my favorite. This is going to be rude, but whatever. It's like the best episode of Murder, She Wrote. You know what I mean?
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. But it's like that, like, ooh, it's a murder mystery, but also it's fabulous. But also it's like, you know, it's all of those things. It's great. But then I don't know if I would recommend Marnie. I mean, there's a lot of great things in it, but, oh, God, I felt like I was waiting for RuPaul to show up with some Tic Tacs. It was so much armchair psychology, and I was like, I'm not really, no.
I think it is a film you will never forget.
Sure.
And there's so many layers, you know, whether they were intended or not, or what they were intended for. It's just a movie that has stuck out in my mind in his filmography. So I think for that reason, if you're into it, I would say watch it. But anyway, let's talk about Stage Fright, starring Marlene Dietrich, Jane Wyman, and a whole bunch of British people you've never heard of. We should mention that Alma Revelle, Alfred Hitchcock's wife, is one of the screenwriters. So it's always fabulous to see the woman behind the man because I think she doesn't get enough credit in history, like most women.
I am obsessed with this movie. Everyone was so good.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad and I'm so excited. Yes.
Yes. I mean, all of the actors were great. She was great. Marlena was amazing. Everything just kept going and moving and it kind of kept you on your toes and it was just fun.
Stage Fright was sort of at the 1950, the tail end of noir, the tail end of World War II. And I think London was still obviously fucked at this point. They filmed it in London. And the basic plot is Jane Wyman is in love with Johnny. It's so generic. He's so like disposable trash that I love it.
Well, Johnny.
Really generic. Johnny Smith. I don't know. I think it's Johnny.
Well, no, Smith is
that's true.
Smith.
Ordinary Smith.
The name is Smith.
Just ordinary Smith?
Jane Wyman is an actress and she's in love with Johnny Nobody, but Johnny Nobody is in love with Marlene Dietrich. And this web that is weaved of her murdered husband and who's really behind it. And she's going to go undercover and use her acting skills to smoke out Marlena because she thinks that she's the actual murderess and protect Johnny against, all odds
or beguiling
whatever.
ways. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Well, what I really loved about this was that she's our protagonist. She's the female lead. And
Yes.
she is smart, but not very smart. And
she's smart, but she's, digmatized.
Sure, that's true
So,
too. Yes. But also, like, there's often times where you're like, well, that's not a good plan. And her dad is like, but sweetie, that's not a good plan. It's like, she's not stupid.
I'm excited to talk about her dad, by the way.
Oh my God, yes. She was very real. You're like, oh,
Yes.
well, she's not just some bumbling idiot who's like, oh, I just love him and I'll do whatever. But she's also not like some crafty, I know I can figure out and I'm going to play everyone like a fiddle. No, she's like in between.
She's a well-rounded, character with lots of dimensions. But should we talk about the opening scene, the infamous, I guess we'll spoil it now. The opening scene is a flashback.
Yeah.
But it is a complete fabrication.
Right.
And
Well,
at
okay,
the
yes.
time, people hated it.
Oh.
Critics hated this. It was such a controversy that because this was the first time that had ever been, or perhaps the first time, but the first time it had ever really been utilized as a movie just lying to you, where
Right.
every other instance, like a flashback is like revealing truths and evidence, and here's, just a scene
Right.
that we didn't see that happened earlier. And this scene where, talk about getting played like a fiddle.
Well, Johnny, what will they do to me?
Well, don't tremble like that. We'll find a way. We'll see you all right, darling.
I was reading Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer recently. I don't know if he coined this phrase, and he's probably definitely using it for the wrong reasons, but I kind of like it. He coined the phrase struck.
Oh.
Instead of pussy whipped.
And
I like it.
I like that a
I think
lot.
I want to reappropriate that
Yes.
and be like, yes, he is struck, because that is what is happening to Johnny in this scene.
I'd do anything for you. You know that.
That's very interesting to think about. Like, basically, this is probably the first time that was done, where like, film, when you see something represented in the movie, you're supposed to believe that that's the way that it is because you're seeing it happen. And so this is really more of like a picture it, ooh, dream sequence, or flashback. You have to be skeptical of like, what can I really believe? And it's interesting because when I watched it, I was like, well, that's what he said. So it's done well enough that you, like, at least, although maybe that's because I'm a modern audience, not 1950s audience. But still, I was like, well, that's what he said.
Yeah, this idea of an unreliable narrator, but I think the scene works because he doesn't portray, like, this is his side of, or his lie, his side of the story, but he portrays himself as a struck idiot. You know what I mean? Oh, sure, Marlena, I'll go back to the murder scene and get you a fresh dress that's the exact same dress, but in a different color. No problem. I got you. And I'm like, no, just go buy a dress or something. Like, what are you doing? Don't return to the scene of the crime.
Why didn't she just go buy a new dress? Well, she had her trench coat on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But this also really made me want to rewatch Witness for the Prosecution, which, if you haven't seen, another Marlena murder mystery.
I'm in.
Oof, you gotta watch it. It's so good. Johnny has convinced Jane Wyman that he is innocent and unreproachful, whisks him away to her father's cabin by a lake.
Yeah. Or the sea. It seems
By
like
the
the ocean
sea?
because he was a smuggler from Ireland.
Brandy, a couple
Yeah.
of bottles of brandy. He's wearing Chris Evans' white sweater from Knives Out. He's fabulous, One of my favorite thing about Hitchcock movies is the side characters because they're so very memorable, and we'll get into that more with the movies that we are going to watch throughout the month, but they're always on board. They're like, you got a problem? Someone got murdered? Something crazy happened? I'm in. How
Yeah.
can I help and
Yeah.
be wacky and satirical at the same time?
Captain Wilde. What seems to be the trouble, Captain?
And so the dad really represents that character in this movie. And I think it allows the audience to be that person. Like, you want to be that friend that's on board for anything and up for the adventure. But it's, obviously you don't want to actually get involved in a murder mystery. But watching it, you're sort of like, ooh, I'm so excited about this.
If you're going to kill somebody, do it simply. The most important thing is that no one should suspect me.
Think of it. This very minute, there are hundreds of people who've committed murder and they're walking about freely.
Those side characters work as sort of like an audience surrogate, and you get to soil your dark, satirical, horrible oats and just be like, aren't I fascinated with murder?
Do you always have to talk about killing people?
We're not talking about killing people. Hert's talking about killing me, and I'm talking about killing him.
It's your father's way of relaxing.
It's the murder she wrote of it all. That's what I'm saying.
It's the
That's
murder
why
she
it
wrote
works.
of it all. And so there's almost always a character in Hitchcock movies that's obsessed with murder or mayhem or some kind of dark satirical thoughts and stuff like that. And so it sort of lets you experience that without actually experiencing it, which is, the point of movies, really.
That is really true. And I will say for both of these, it was very much like that escapism of the movies where you are in this world for the next hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is. I guess Marnie was longer, and I think Marnie might have been too long. But this was tight. This was under 2 hours. This was an hour and a half, I think.
It's great. Jane Wyman gets to do a reverse makeover and then reverts back.
I think it's called Undercover, but yes. Reverse makeover, sure.
Well, she dresses down she gets really dressed down with the glasses and the whole thing and makes herself look really unattractive the standards. And I just love how much she thought that, just brushing her hair and wearing better clothes was going to be a disguise. That people wouldn't recognize her.
Wouldn't be like, oh, you're the same person. Yeah.
Clearly, what's happened? You just have lipstick on and you brushed your hair. That's the same. You're still the maid. You're still Nellie, right? No?
That happens later that they're like, what are you doing standing there? Come help. But that was the thing. I think she didn't necessarily expect that.
She didn't expect to fall in love with Detective Ordinary Smith.
I know, but he was kind of fun. I liked him.
I liked him a lot, and in some scenes, he was really giving me Alan Cumming vibes.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
The dressed down, glamorous versus undercover plot line was actually interrupted by Jane Wyman. She felt so insecure that Marlene, in these Dior gowns, looking absolutely fantastic. Because, Marlene never appeared on screen without looking like perfection. That just didn't exist. It doesn't exist. There is not a bad photograph of her. It doesn't exist. She brings her own lighting. We'll talk about it. And so Jane Wyman throughout production kept on sort of,
I love it.
Oh no, I'm dressed down, totally, whatever. And so that plot sort of wavers up and down.
Interesting. Oh no, now I like them. I kind of loved the reverse My Fair Lady, and then she goes back. It was kind of like, oh no, I can do both.
You don't see that all the time. It's always like she has to have her hair up in a bun and glasses and be unattractive to men, and then become Cinderella. And I like the reversal of that. I think that's really fun.
Yes, but also I thought it was really fun too where it all fits within her character as well, that she's an actress. So she's excited to be playing this part. Later on, when she's talking to Marlene in the dressing room.
Oh, I hate all this, madam. I'm that nervous.
You see, I happen to have a dress that belongs to you with a big blood stain down the front.
I know nothing about a bloodstained dress.
She sees that she's not getting anywhere, and she just drops the, like, Cockney accent.
Just, okay.
This sounds to me remarkably like blackmail. I think I better call the police.
Yes, do call the police, Miss Imwood.
I think it's time that we have to talk about the musical performance in the middle of this Hitchcock suspense murder mystery.
Yes.
And we might talk about it for the rest of the review. Have you seen Blazing Saddles?
Yes.
Whenever you sort of discover that nugget of like, oh my God, this is the exact thing that Mel Brooks was making fun of, and now it's twice as funny as ever before.
Yep.
It's like when you finally watch Prince of Thieves after having watched Robin Hood Men in Tights for like 15 years, and you're like, oh my God, Prince of Thieves is just a comedy. Like, what's going on? This is crazy.
Tired, sick, and tired of love. I'm the laziest girl in town.
But this Cole Porter uncredited song, The Laziest Girl in the World.
I loved her moving from chaise to chaise.
Sorry, that chaise is taken.
Multiple chaises in this very yonic set, you know, very vaginal. She's surrounded by ruffled vagina. She is dancing and performing a song about sex inside of a ruffled vagina. That's all you could say. And she has like a meringue. The dress is just all meringue.
Yes.
Loved every second of it.
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't disappoint my fans. I must go on.
It would be a terrible strain to play, wouldn't it?
Oh, ghastly. But I can't help feel for my poor, dear, loyal public.
But apparently the censors were really upset about this song because it was too much. It was far too much.
Not 'cause I wouldn't.
Not that I shouldn't, not that I couldn't.
And you know it's not 'cause I couldn't.
Oh, you know it's not 'cause I couldn't. Yeah, it was great.
I'm just too lazy to fuck. I'm living inside of this giant ruffled vagina, and I've got way too many chaises to lay on. This was just... Madeline Kahn is obviously the most genius ever.
I need some rest.
Sick and tired of love. You know, it's the same thing, and it really made me laugh that, because, I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but Marlene Dietrich is a bad singer, right? Like, she's not good. She has a style and a vibe, but it's not good.
Though I'm more than willing to learn.
And so it was so funny to me that she kept being like, oh, my understudy, people hate her. They're, you know, walking out because I'm not there to sing. And then she comes out and it's just like, na, 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 na. And I'm just like, yes, I don't know, that's wild.
But she's so fabulous that it's like, well, sure, you know, there's that charisma that just oozes.
You can't replace it. So speaking of Marlene, in a turn of events that was very un-Hitchcock, he allowed Marlene Dietrich to light her own scenes because she famously would carry around a trunk of lights and bring them and light herself because you can't light, you know, it's Marlene Dietrich.
I love that.
Obsessed with her.
Fabulous Bunt Island shit right there.
Oh, well, she's definitely the lighting designer of Fabulous Bunt Island. I mean, obviously. Hands down.
Duh.
All of these eye lights, it was very like different vibe and lighting for Hitchcock, and you can tell that she was involved basically.
Interesting. But the lighting was spectacular all around. I mean, obviously Hitchcock, the film work is going to be great, but some of these shots and stuff were just like truly like, you're just like, damn. These days,
I think
you like, you know, when you're just like, oh right, good filmmaking, huh?
He really technically was a perfectionist and just knew how to make a fucking good looking movie. And I think he really invites the audience in to participate because it's not subtle. His filmmaking is not subtle. Like, look at this close-up of this gun because, you know, but it's fun. And I think people might look back at it now and go, this is so cheesy or over the top. But he invented that.
Right. Right.
You know.
That's true. And there's a lot of tropes and stuff of his filmmaking that now seem like they're overwrought or overdone or whatever, but it's like, well, but when you were the first person to do that, then like you set the standard.
Well, and finding a way to insert suspense into every moment because you've connected with the characters, and so you immediately are drawn to, even if it's someone like, Norman Bates, you're not rooting for him, but when the car is sinking in the swamp and it stops, you go, oh no, he's not going to be able to fulfill the plan of, oh wait, what am I doing? He just murdered someone. Oh my God. He puts you in the driver's seat of the villains, of the dark, of the depraved, of the debaucherous, and you kind of get to like go, ooh, I'm walking around in their skin a little bit.
Yes, although it is interesting that even these two back to back, right? Stage Fright at the end, spoiler alert again, you should have watched it by now. It starts with the psychoanalysis. Hitchcock is so obsessed with psychoanalysis.
I can't help it, Eve. I can't control myself, even when I was a kid.
And then with Marnie, it really goes off the rails for me.
Well, I think part of that is the time period, 40s, 50s, 60s people were starting to reflect and talk about psychoanalysis, talk about their feelings. Things weren't just you're bad, you're good, and and I think it's that the writing of that line and the sort of dichotomy of being both at once that is tense and frustrating and suspenseful and makes you go, oh my gosh! And they stick with you because of that, because they are ambiguous in many ways.
Yes.
We'll get there's more psychoanalysis to come. I hope you're okay with it. It makes me laugh at this point because it's so overwrought and campy and ridiculous. What they thought was, and also it's a movie, so of course it's like, oh my God, I'm cured.
Well, right.
Shall we be off on our fairy tale adventure? And so for me, it's like fun in retrospect to watch that. And I'm not like, oh no, I should really empathize with these feelings. No, it's fine.
Sure. I guess that was what was interesting in terms of the success for it. For me was that in Stage Fright, it's not all about that. It's about the murder mystery and proving his innocence or whatever, like what happened, finding the truth of the murder. In Marnie, it really was much more about, I'm going to fix you, girl, and then I fixed you. And it's like, well, having
we'll talk about it.
Left it some nuance would have been actually a lot more interesting. The shades of gray rather than the black or white of, okay, well, that's why she was like this, so now it's all okay, and now we can fuck. It's like, well, okay.
I think there's, and perhaps unintentionally so, I think there are lots of layers to Marnie that you can read into and perhaps see other perspectives or things that seem like, oh, everything's tied up in a knot is actually not, and we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm excited to talk about it. But, almost done talking about Stage Fright, but
Sure.
I wanted to mention, like, adding suspense anywhere. Just having it be rainy on that
the garden
carnival,
party.
What was the garden party, where everyone's dressed in all these fabulous white outfits, and it's raining. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
All of their hair and the hats, it's like downpouring. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? All the clothes and the shoes, oh my God. And so I was tense the whole thing, but then I love that the rain stops for Marlene, obviously, because...
Oh, of course.
Well, and there's always interesting topics that are brought up in Hitchcock movies that were not discussed. Her parents are separated, and if it was a different time period, they would be divorced.
My mother's really a dear, my father too, of course. But they shouted at one another, and neither one liked to shout.
Your mother and father don't live together.
He lives by the seaside, she lives in the city. They are living separate lives, and they don't say divorce, I don't think, but it's very implied that there is no love between them.
Well, Jonathan could have my room, and I could sleep on the settee. Where should we put your father?
No, I'll sleep in the settee, and you can sleep with your mama.
Well, obviously, you're not gonna fucking sleep in bed with me, husband.
Right.
And the mom and dad are just so on board. Johnny so-and-so.
Harbor a murderer, sure. I love that too. No, well, actually, he's wanted for murder, and it's now you've gone too far.
It's too much.
He's wanted for murder.
Now you're going too far.
Love at a certain point, Jane Wyman's hair, I mean, that hair is what she's famous for. Like, she always had that hair. But there was a certain scene where it was really giving me Peppermint Patty vibes, and I was really enjoying it. So they're at the garden party, and I mean, we get Hitchcock's daughter as Chubby Bannister. And Jane Wyman and her kind of could pass as sisters or whatever. So I think she did all of the driving scenes for Jane Wyman. But she shows up and is memorable. The ducky lady.
Yes, I suppose you could, but you'll have to pay for it.
Yes, I know, but how much, please?
Well, it's for the orphans.
Yes, I know, but how much?
You are sorry for the orphans, aren't you?
Of course I am.
I'm obsessed with this woman. Oh my God.
Obsessed with her.
Wait a minute. I think you'll have to do it yourself. I'm not frightfully good. Be rather careful, won't you? When that goes off.
Oh, because they have that whole sort of dream, mesmerizing, falling in love scene in the cab where it's just like,
she just loses her mind to love.
And I love her dad is like, you're not thinking of changing horses midstream, are you?
Is that bad? Nah, go for it.
Johnny's not really reliable. Also, he's a murderer.
Turns out.
He may or may not be a serial killer, we find out at the end. So this dramatic, the final scene takes place back in the theater, and Marlene's sitting on the stage bored with her eyelight. Oh, am I being charged for murder?
Accessory.
How clever of you. Things look bad for me, don't they? I'm what you call an accessory.
The perfect eyelight, the suit, on point. Yes. And this very tense and creepy scene. Jane Wyman and Johnny are under the stage and they're in a carriage and it's just
very Titanic.
Eyelight. I know, I thought the same thing. I was like, where's the handprint? And her like crystallized tears. It was all gorgeous.
Yeah.
And real close up, claustrophobic. And Johnny has this turn. I mean, this is the only scene really that Johnny's worth anything for acting wise.
She made me think she was crazy about me. She knew the sort of man I was. She knows that I can't control myself if I get into a rage. Like a fool, I tell her about that girl I'd killed.
Well, because at first when they showed him at the very beginning, he's like, you know, one of the French
the chorus
mistake,
boys or whatever.
Like, gay dancers. And I was like, well, so he's a homosexual, right? Correct? Oh, no, that's not what's okay, great.
I mean, that's what I thought, though, too. I thought the whole time, I was like, he's, one, very pretty, and two, he was like a chorus boy, like you know, dancing, holding her up. But yeah, I did think.
Subtext, we can get into it. But he basically has a turn and reveals like, oh, you know, sometimes I just get so rageful that I strangle people. So
yeah. And his hands, and she's like, no. She plays him very well.
It's like an acting masterclass. There's like a funny sort of overall arc of her becoming a better actress via solving this murder mystery, and I really like that.
I do too. It's fun. That's what I'm saying. It's a campy, fun time.
And then this dramatic Iron Curtain.
That's right.
Drop the Iron Curtain and cut him off. Get out. Get out of the way.
The safety curtain. And you know what? I love that too, though, where it starts and it's like safety curtain coming up. And I'm like, well, what's this all about now? And then, of course.
That was very dramatic.
Yeah, what a way to go. Yikes.
There's always, like, if you think about them, very dark things in these Hitchcock movies.
Sure.
Very. Speaking of, shall we talk about Marnie?
Oh, my God. I have so many thoughts.
I have pages and pages of notes. First and foremost, Marnie is, I think, a really interesting and fascinating movie, but trigger warning, there is a rape scene and there is an animal that is killed. So if those things are, you know, by 1964 standards, it's not Saw. But if those things are triggering to you, don't watch Marnie.
Right.
You're good.
It's not a major part, but and it's not too graphic. But it is present, and I was very upset by the animal.
I thought that I would warn you, and then I forgot. But now I'm like, maybe it was better because just to experience it.
You kind of have to feel those feelings. It's a feel, you know? So I guess real quick, the general plot, without spoiling too much yet, is that she is a woman who is a thief from companies.
Baltimore. Oh, no, Virginia.
From where, Blackie? Different places.
Well, I don't remember. Anyway, she moves around. She has multiple identities and home locations. Who gets caught in a web, I guess.
I got to get out of here. I'm trapped. I feel like I'm caught in a web.
By Sean Connery, or vice versa. Each way, they, I don't know how to sum it up aside from that.
You want me to try?
Sure.
Marnie from 1964, starring Tippi Hedren as the titular character. She is a thief and a liar and a cheat, but she's decent. And it starts as a sort of a spy thriller, and gradually we find out that Marnie has a lot of past trauma, and her sexy boss, Sean Connery, wants to fix her in a game of cat and wildcat. But, the plot isn't really what's important. It's the deeper meaning behind it all.
She's a jaguarande. I trained her.
Oh? What did you train her to do?
To trust me.
Like I said earlier, it's a movie that stays with you, and because it's not perfect, because it's not a masterpiece, it's almost more interesting to talk about what it could have been. Perhaps if you read it in a different lens, does it become something else? Very Fatal Attraction in that way. So let's get into it. Marnie, 1964, starring Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery as a Philadelphian socialite.
With that accent, though, still. I was like, what?
Let's back up and see if you can turn that Mount Everest of manure into a few facts.
But I'm not going to lie, he can get it.
Oh, he can fully get it, and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So talking about Sean Connery, it's really interesting the timing of this all. In 1964, he had done Dr. No and From Russia with Love. I think it's really interesting that he decided to sign up for this role, which in my mind is a villain. I don't know if that was the intent of the filmmakers, but certainly a dark, flawed person, not a hero.
See, and I kind of agree, but I also very much disagree. Every time I would think about the ickiness of Sean Connery's character, he never crossed the line all the way.
What about when he rapes her on the boat?
When did he rape her on the boat? He never touched her.
What do you mean? I mean, there's an implied rape scene.
Wait, really?
Remember he tears her nightgown off?
Yeah, but then he puts the jacket around her.
Well, I guess it's up to interpretation. And you can see
Is it a metaphorical scene, or is it
implied? It is documented and implied that it is in fact a rape scene.
Got you.
So, and there was a lot of controversy about should we leave it in? Numerous writers were like, I don't think it should be in there. Then he hired a female writer that was like, yeah, we can make it work. Just this is how you should film it. Right. I find it interesting because it's not, like you said, you didn't even realize it. It is not a movie where the plot is the rape, which is so frequently what the case is. Oh, it's a rape revenge movie, or it's some sort of, it does shift things in their relationship. Don't get me wrong. It's important. It's dramatic, all the above. But it's not like the point of the movie, which in some ways is more terrifying, right? It's just a spousal rape, which is not talked about at all in movies.
No. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of flaws with the intent of the movie and all of the above, but also there's so many things in this movie that are just never discussed that are in this, suicide, potential molestation, and or at least the idea that there could be molestation, that it exists in the world, even to mention it.
Prostitution.
Prostitution, workplace harassment, there's lots of things in here that in many ways were just not addressed at all. And so that's, I think, why I find it so fascinating. And I find Marnie so fascinating.
Sure. Well, and she's so great, Tippi Hedren, in that role. There's so much going on,
It is her movie. That's also why I love it.
When I think of the things I've done to try to make you love me, the things I've done.
There is something about Tippi Hedren, and this just bananas off the walls, all over the place. I think this is the closest that Hitchcock ever got to Showgirls. It is that level of just what are these choices?
Sure.
It's like borderline experimental, this movie.
A little bit.
The amount of like weird filmmaking going on, but then it's just two shots of people talking. But then all of the colors and the zooms and the matte paintings and like this idea that everything's a facade. There's just a lot going on in this movie.
There really is. That's what I did find so fun about it. If we're talking about like everything's a remake these days, I would love to see a very carefully and respectfully done remake of Marnie, where these ideas are more, I guess, modern and thoughtfully approached.
Yeah.
But like when you break it down, basically the story is Sean Connery. Is it a long con that he sees her? I guess the darker view is that he sees her and wants to fuck her. And so then he plays her in his little ways and basically traps her and blackmails her through a series of different ways of making her his wife and then...
Yes, I think it's a movie about fetishes and...
Right. Well, and fix her. Tame her.
I mean, we'll get into the wild prey of it all. She, in the book, because most of Hitchcock's films are based on books, he would option them and then adapt them with numerous different people, famous writers here and there. And I think part of that structure is the reason there are so many dark things in his movies, because books were allowed to talk about anything.
Sure.
And so even if it's not portrayed right on screen, there's always stuff going on under the surface. And so in the book, she has a psychoanalyst. The husband makes her go. He's like, please go and get help. In the movie, they combined it into him, which is very problematic.
Yeah.
And the Lil character, the sister-in-law character, was a man in the book and was also vying for Marnie's affections.
Who's the dish?
Oh boy.
So that's fun because I think there is, in some alternate reality, a movie version of Marnie where Lil and Marnie are fabulous thief lovers who just fuck over men and have a fabulous time, queer time together, because Lil is interested. She's very interested in what is going on with Marnie.
Hi. I've seen you at Rutland's, haven't I?
Bewilders me what any of you can find to do at Rutland's.
I could easily see like the Maggie Gyllenhaal of it all, you know, where it's like, okay, she's into it, right? It's very Cruel Intentions-y of like, who's what, you know? And
we're playing games with her. There's stuff going on. Lil, played by Diane Baker, who is in Straight Jacket, one of my favorite terrible, terrible films that you should all watch. Got the same little bob. It's great.
What bothered me about her storyline was that it just fell to the wayside.
Yeah. It is not fleshed out completely, but it's very much like there is a whole conspiracy theory plot of the birds that the teacher woman, who's, oh God, who's the main guy? I'm totally blanking, but his ex-girlfriend or his ex-lover, and she's all jealous of Tippi Hedren. And there's a whole like alternate reading of it where she's a witch and she's brought all the birds to them and she's jealous, and it's this whole thing very like Ferris Bueller where it's like, oh, it was all in Cameron's mind, he was asleep and sick all day. It's one of those. And so I think, you know, you can read into it what you will, but yes, her character is not particularly fleshed out, and I think that's unfortunate.
I do too. I would love to really add more to this, and it is a long movie, but still I think there's space to put stuff into it that could be really interesting. That's very fascinating to know that there's a psychologist in the book, because I think having him be this like, oh, I'm so interested in, you know, psychoanalyst, and
I definitely grew up in Philadelphia.
So let's just drop the whole thing for the present and try to get through this bloody honeymoon cruise with as much grace as possible.
Because I guess he wanted Paul Newman, which makes so much more sense. I mean, go watch The Young Philadelphians if you haven't. It's great. It's so funny that Sean Connery is playing an aristocratic, old money, New England, you know, all American family guy. And you're just like, what the fuck is this casting? But Sean Connery really wanted to break the mold and not be a spy, an action guy. And so he put it out there that he wanted to work with Hitchcock. and they both made it happen. But
love that.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But somehow I don't know, they're both so fucking enigmatically charismatic that you're all in for this horrible Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, I'm playing you, you're playing me thing that's going on. I think it could be balanced better in a different movie, but there really is we're both fucked up and we're sort of trying to fix each other while fucking each other.
Yes. Or not fucking is the thing, though. But maybe you add that element in. Maybe it's less about giving up her virginity and the touch of a man thing aspect of it, and it's right. I don't know.
I think that is obviously a clunky metaphor for independence.
Yeah.
Feminine freedom, freedom of her own sexuality, freedom of her own body, all of that stuff. And so if you sort of read it as this feminist woman who's like doesn't need a man, is independently wealthy because she's fucking over gross lecherous men, and is supporting her single mother, riding her horse to get her pleasure out. I mean, there was so much going on. There's really a trope in older movies, and I think this is historically true, that women's sexuality is represented in the riding of horses, like,
sure.
I'm looking at you, leave her to heaven. That's her only pleasure.
A girl, is it? Oh, it's all right, Dad. She's not really a girl. She's a horse fancier.
Right.
Forio is her only pleasure. And the first line of dialogue, if you're going to bite someone, bite me. It's just so
right? And
good.
the way she says it, I was like, I need a gif of this.
Tried to bite me twice already this morning.
Oh, Forio, if you want to bite somebody, bite me.
Bite me? But also, I'm angry at you. You did not warn me.
Oh, I meant to. I honestly meant to, and then I forgot. I'm so sorry.
That was traumatic.
Yes. A gun! Give me a hot gun! My horse is screaming! Give me a gun! You want to shoot your horse?
To lighten this scene, they put horses on giant treadmills. That is how they filmed those scenes.
Is that how I was just so curious as to what was going on.
Because it's a real horse. Often you see it and you're like, that's a stuffed horse. They're clearly riding like a fake stuffed horse.
Right.
These were real horses on treadmills. Giant treadmills with rear projections. So there's so much in this movie that is weird looking, that is experimental in many ways, that is visually just like, what the fuck is this? And so I can't be bored.
I mean, the filmmaking, again, but like is so fascinating where like these angles and the stairs, there's a lot of just cool, wacky stuff. I mean, we haven't even talked about it. I love that the movie starts and it's its own different kind of movie where it's just like, she's this workplace.
Heartbreakers.
Yeah. She's like a modern thief. This was so fun. Not promises, but like, what's the
how to
succeed in business? It's one of those kinds of vibes. I mean, I love this. He can't even remember the code. He has to write it down in the
It's only 5 numbers. Well, I love Miss Claiborne, who's his secretary. She's our backstory and exposition character.
Bye, Miss Claiborne. Bye. It's Lil Mannering, Mr. Rutland's sister-in-law. Her sister was Mr. Rutland's wife. Yeah, she died about 1.5 years ago, some kind of heart thing.
It was very Chris Farley in Wayne's World.
Belongs to Frank Sharp, head of Sharp Records. He's going across the country right now to look for new acts. Next stop is St. Louis, and he's going to come back through Chicago on his way to Detroit.
For a security guard, he had an awful lot of information, don't you think?
That's his sister-in-law, and that's his dad, and he took over for the company 3 months ago or whatever, and his wife died from a weird heart thing. I think we might have to talk about the details of that story.
Well, anyway, she kind of brought Lil up. Lil lived with them and old Mr. Rutland out at Wickwin. And I get the feeling little old Lil plans to stay on.
I was like, oh, if we read deeper into this, did Sean Connery kill his wife?
You think?
No, but that scene in The Office when he tells her that, he's so fucking blasé.
Are you interested in pre-Columbian art, Mrs. Taylor? Now, those were collected by my wife. She's dead. They're the only things of hers I've kept.
Oh yeah, my wife died. Like, he's just so like over it, and it's only been 1.5 years, and something about the way he said it, I just started laughing because I was just like,
what?
She's dead.
What's happening exactly? But yes, so Mrs. Claiborne, played by Mariette Hartley, who I think most famously is from Ride the High Country, my favorite Sam Peckinpah movie. Lots of fun little side characters showing up, doing a good bit of business. We'll talk about Marnie's mom for a while.
God. Yes. But I also loved going back to the secretaries, really, because there was her, but then at the first part, too, she was kind of sassy about it. It was almost giving me, like, Devil Wears Prada vibes.
Yes, she had references, I'm sure.
Oh, Mr. Stratt, don't you remember? She didn't have any references at all?
Like Emily Blunt's character always just has these little sassy lines.
I think there's a deeper reading of this movie that absolutely perhaps was unintended, but of this exposing of this horribly sexist workplace, that hadn't been discussed at all at this point. And they're just blatantly, horribly sexist misogynists. Oh, the one with the legs? Like, it's just, it's not even a concern to them.
I pointed her out to you the last time you were here. You said something about how I was improving the looks of the place.
Oh, that one. The brunette with the legs.
Do you think that was intentional, or was that just a representation of the time and the talk and the...
Who knows? Hitchcock did have, Alma Revelle, was behind the scenes on every movie that he did. And so perhaps she inserted some sort of female perspective there. I think because it's ambiguous, because there's so many things going on, the movie can be both misogynistic and feminist. It can have the duality of both those things. And whether or not he intended it to read this way, I think it does absolutely read this way now, much like Fatal Attraction, where you're like, oh, Glenn Close is our hero, right? Like, she's the best. We love her. What? Michael Douglas is supposed to be, like, we're rooting for... No, we're not rooting for that piece of shit. What? And so I think watching it in different eras with different perspectives is what makes it fun to talk about.
When the cops ask for a description, and he's like, oh, well, I can describe her perfectly. She had beautiful eyes, and they just laugh at him.
110 pounds, size 8 dress, good teeth. Well, what's so damn funny? There's been a grand larceny committed in these premises.
And the assistant's like giving him like this fucking piece of shit. He can't even remember anything. What the fuck? Like,
right, he can't remember the combination
bosses,
to the safe, but like,
all of the bosses are presented as incompetent. I mean, Mark isn't. I want to talk about the opening scene. So Marnie's plastic black wig that
she washes out.
This yellow purse. I read a whole article that just talked about the purses in Marnie because their favorite, I'll post it here. I forget the woman's name who wrote the article, but she was talking about how Marnie's her favorite Hitchcock movie. And mainly it's because of the fetishization. Oh my God. Fetishization. The fetishization of purses, and how she was expressing that she thinks Edith Head absolutely intended all of the purses to look like vaginas. And I was like, wait a minute. Yes. Obsessed with this idea. Yeah. And whether or not it's true, I think it's fun to talk about. Also, I've got my little Edith Head pin here. We haven't talked about her enough at all. The close-ups, the importance of the purse, the organization of the purse, which is purely feminine, the money coming in and out of the purse. I thought that was really a fun article to read.
I love that.
Just talking about, these vaginal purses. I was like, Well, and we haven't even talked about Marnie's hair. Talk about, boobular vaginas. I mean, they're all over the place. They're just all over the place. All of these updos. And then the only time it's down is when she's riding. Because she's free. Yes.
I mean, again, like we said, not subtle. But it's a different unsubtleness. That's not a word, but whatever. Than modern day movies that are not subtle.
He expresses things almost purely visually. So that's one of the many reasons that his movies did so well internationally, is because the dialogue doesn't really matter, right? I think because it's a visual tell or unsubtle thing that's going on, they're not telling you. They're not physically saying, that purse is a vagina. You know what I mean? You're just taking it for what it is, and because there's these dramatic close-ups and because it's yellow and it's the center of the screen, your brain notices. And the more you critically think about his movies, the more you uncover things and go, oh, I wonder if that was what was going on. And even if it wasn't, it's fun to talk about.
Oh, I do want to talk about her mom, who just kept giving me Charlize Theron vibes.
It was like Charlize and Holly Hunter, because there was a lot of talking out of the side of her mouth. Marnie, you're aching my leg. You know, it was a lot of that.
We don't talk smart about the Bible in this house, Missy.
Louise Latham, this was her first movie. She had done a lot of stage acting, but this was I think her first movie, or one of her very first movies. And I thought she was so brilliant. She shows up for like 2 scenes, barely.
Right.
There's so much going on.
Why don't you love me?
Why don't you love me, Mama? I've always wondered why you don't. Mama.
Why don't you give me the respect? It was very like that.
Because I am not one of your fans!
We get our first seeing red moment with the gladiolas. And Jessie, the younger representation of Tippi, and the jealousy of all of that.
I got the hairbrush.
Marnie, mind my leg.
And also probably the mother's like attempt at a do-over, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
absolutely.
I'm in a different position now. I can help this girl get raised right.
Talking about issues with mothers goes hand in hand with Hitchcock. But I think it's interesting that in this one, it is between a woman and her mom. It doesn't feel like a total male perspective of a mother and daughter relationship. And it feels true in many ways. Skipping ahead to the end, not to necessarily spoil the end, but that speech that Louise Latham gives shook me to my core.
I was 15, and Billy said if I let him, I could have the sweater. So I let him.
Oh my God, this is the whole movie.
Yes.
This is the whole movie. They're in a cycle of abuse and a cycle of being marginalized, and it's just repeating and it's repeating. And so for me, the quote unquote happy ending at the end, to me, obviously is not happy.
Oh, Mark, I don't want to go to jail. I'd rather stay with you.
Had you, love?
And whether it was intended to be like, she's great, he fixed her and they're gonna stay married, they are never gonna be happy together. And she is stuck in a different sort of prison. And like, that's how I read it. And so for me, this is like one of the most horrifying Hitchcock movies, because it's like, oh boy, marriage is a jail and you're stuck in it. You know, it was just like,
Yes, and I kind of, what I like is that there is so much to really dig into and to think about and whatever. Because, on one hand, it's so icky and fucked and gross that he's like, well, you can either go to jail or you can be in my jail, where I get to play with you like my little lab rat and, tame you like my jaguar.
My wild animal.
Jaguar?
She's a jaguarundi. I trained her.
Training his Jaguar Undi, the wild cat representation of her. I mean, all of this zoology crap that they threw in about women being prey and predators. And then that book he's reading with aberrations of a criminal female.
Yes. Oh my God.
All of if you will watch more Hitchcock movies, obviously as we're going on in this month, but every book, every newspaper headline is a joke and is hilarious. And I'll put some up here, but keep an eye out because they are so great. Even the newspaper she's holding at some point when she's like leaving the train station, it's like 100 dead and a fire. It's like every headline or book is just like murder, death, destruction, but it's all like bold-faced print, and it just really makes me laugh.
So on one hand, you're like, well, he's a horrible, disgusting human being, and fuck him, that's so fucked.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's like, well, she did that to herself and criminally stole from dozens of people or whatever, and would have gone to jail and be caught. It's not like he was like, I forced you to do this, and now I have you really trapped. It was like, well, you got two options. Either you get the consequences for your actions, or you can have my way out, which is also fucked. I mean, that's on her, but like she she put herself in a fucked situation.
But I would say to take it back even further, society has put her in a fucked situation. Is it a victimless crime if the insurance, what are we really talking about?
Sure.
But he's probably just as fucked as her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't then psychoanalyze him. Although she does in that scene with the lilac bedroom.
Take a look at yourself, old dear. You're so hot to play Mental Health Week. What about you? What about your dreams, Daddy dear?
She wakes up from one of her nightmares and she's like,
You, Freud? Me, Jane?
Like, I bet you're just dying to free associate, aren't you? And just all that stuff was so good.
Oh, doctor, I'll bet you're just dying to free associate.
And like clearly that implies that she is aware of psychology, is aware of her issues on some level, because, or perhaps had some kind of analysis previously or something, because she knows the language and she can satirize it and sort of say fuck you about it. That whole scene, I was just like,
yes. It was
Yes.
very like, oh, why don't you mansplain to me some more, asshole?
Oh, yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Well, come on, I thought you wanted to play doctor, so let's play.
In this all lilac, just like the satin back and the, Well, and that's the scene where Lil comes in her fabulous corseted silk kimono, which I was really,
oh my God, such a good kimono.
Really into.
Yes.
So into it. And she's the one that wakes Marnie up from her stupor. She's the one that draws her out and seems actually compassionate, even though later she's trying to fuck her over. So there was some layers going on there between females.
I do like this idea of like dangerous liaisons, cruel intentions meets Marnie, thruple-y love triangle. Well, not thruple, but like love triangle, the sister and the brother.
It's very Bertolucci.
Is she's just still going after the angle of like, well, we're married now. Guess what, buddy? I own 50% of this, 51% of this company.
Well, I'd like to think that by the end, Marnie has worked through some things and empowers herself to then fuck him over. And maybe they just keep fucking each other over, and that's their vibe. I don't know, but I would like to think that she has more agency by the end. You kind of can interpret whatever you want to. I do like that she's at the end, we've revealed this huge trauma, and she says, well, what do I do now? And he says, what do you want to do? And I was like, wow, you know what? I mean, it's small blessings, it's a tiny step forward, but he said, what would you like to do? And then she essentially chooses her own prison. But, she gets the choice.
Or does she? I mean, I guess,
two.
That's what she's more into. I don't know. It almost felt like they were like, well, we got to end this quickly. So, boom, they unlocked the hidden trauma.
It's a movie. It's a movie. It's like every horror movie is like, and then there's one girl left. Thank God but she is fucked though. Like she's like fucked forever though. Her psyche is.
Yeah.
She's going to need a lot of, but it's a movie. The long process of analyzing yourself over many, many years is not interesting.
No, it's not a fun movie. No.
But it really reminded me of, and I wish it was more this, but it reminded me of, there's this movie called Foxes with Jodie Foster. I'm going to spoil something. At the end, they've gotten in all this trouble. There are all these girls and whatever, and we're independent and we're great. It ends at a church, and the movie heavily implies that it's a funeral for one of the girls. That she has died tragically, and we just see Jodie Foster's face, and oh boy, my friend has died, and it pans to reveal she's getting married. And it's so good. You're just like, oh, and it's just like, it's, Mufasa. It's like, oh.
I just hear that name and I shut up. Mufasa. Ooh. Do it again. Mufasa. Ooh. Mufasa, Mufasa, Mufasa.
Oh, fuck. it's like so unexpected, and sorry for spoiling it, but you're not going to watch it anyway. But, so anyway, I wish obviously that the movie had that kind of like, we know what we're doing and we're actually trying to say something about this. but we're not. It's a happy ending. They made it. Yay for them. They're both fixed.
He unlocked her trauma, and now she's not afraid by a man's touch, and so now he can fuck her like he's wanted to for so long.
In my mind, now that he won't care.
Maybe.
It's the conquest of it all, right?
Well, right.
That's his whole thing.
You don't love me. You think I'm some kind of animal you've trapped.
That's right, you are. And I've caught something really wild this time, haven't I?
And that was definitely part of the... Right? Oh, he tamed the wild...
He tamed that wild cat.
She's a jaguarundi. I trained her.
The Tippi-undi. He tamed the Tippi-undi, it was that.
Which is fascinating because Tippi Hedren went on to create a big cat animal sanctuary and made one of the most genuinely horrifying films, Roar, which I do not recommend.
Okay.
It's like her and Melanie Griffith is her daughter, and the whole family the plot is nonsense and doesn't make sense, but they filmed it on this big cat reserve, and there's all these actual maulings, and
oh God,
it was upsetting to me. Going back to Tippi Hedren's hair, it was verging on Gary Oldman in Dracula. Like, it was serious. It's not even a pompadour, I guess. It was nearing Mars Attacks level. It was crazy.
I also love just like, she changed her hair from black to chestnut, and now, boom, can't recognize her.
You washed that wig right out of your hair, girl. I was really waiting for it to be, because it could have just been a wig,
Right.
She's in disguise, right? And it's no easy feat going from black hair to blonde hair. So I thought that would have been a funny extra layer of him being like, well, she has dark, beautiful, raven hair, and the secretary is like, bitch, that is a plastic wig. What are you...
Black, wavy hair.
It's just a wig. I like the idea that would be, but then she washes.
Right, like he fell for it, but like the women were not buying it.
Well, we haven't talked enough about Tippi Hedren's performance, I don't think. Yeah. She has so many layers. She's a very controlled, practiced thief.
Yeah.
She reverts back to a childhood self when she's with her mother. She's a vulnerable, broken woman in many ways. Like, there's very much a lot of layers going on, which makes her such a fascinating character study. And I thought Tippi Hedren was great. Originally, Hitchcock wanted Grace Kelly to come out of royal retirement. She had married Prince Rainier at this point. And there was talks that she was going to do it, and there was different speculations that, like, the people of Monaco were like, no, our queen can't play a thief. But it would have been kind of interesting, like, to catch a thief, famously, Grace Kelly, Cary Grant, and now in this, she's the thief. Like, that's sort of interesting. But I think Tippi brings such a vulnerability to this role. She was a single mother in real life. And, there's some pretty upsetting stories about her and Hitchcock's relationship and how he basically tried to sleep with her and she was like, fuck no, and he kind of destroyed her career, which is very upsetting. But I think that's all in the performance. That's all going on. And while I'm not like, yay, her real trauma came out it informs her performance. And this movie already exists. We can't go back in time. And so to just talk about it as it is, I think it shows. It's there in the performance for me. And I thought she was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, men. You say no thanks to one of them, and bingo, you're a candidate for the funny farm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, she certainly brings a realness and like a humbleness to the character that is so necessary. Because if it was someone who was a little bit more prissy and like poised, I guess, which is not the right term, because it's not that that's necessarily her, but she is more just a little, there's like a grittiness that you can see come out where you're like, this person's lived. She's seen some things.
Yes. She's seen the shit. And I think that, like I said, that informs her acting. And so I think people at the time were like, oh, she was miscast. And I was like, no, I don't think you could do much better. I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, our talks about a remake, I was like, God, I don't know who you could do to do it. Because I think Charlize at this point, probably too old. Maybe
I
Elizabeth
mean,
Debicki.
They probably, always Elizabeth Debicki, honestly. But I think for the marketing of it all, they'd probably be like, let's get Dakota Johnson, because that's her granddaughter. No. We haven't talked about Edith Head. We have not talked. We did. We talked about the vaginal purses. All of these perfectly tailored, demure suits that she's wearing are so fantastic. And that white Grecian column dress with her huge octopus boob hair was everything. I was so fucking into it.
Yes.
It was enormous. It was bigger than my hat. It was crazy.
It was great.
I was like, she's spending 4 to 6 hours a day on her hair. I guess she's got nothing else to do, and she's, living in a marriage of a prison of a marriage. So she's like, I can't, honey. I'm doing my hair.
Yeah.
Sorry about it.
I have to wash my hair that day.
I got to wash that wig right out of my hair that day. Sorry about it.
I like to think that it was a cinematic homage, if not parallel, that in Clueless when they washed the dye out of her hair.
Right? Very that. It's the same shot.
Yeah.
Pretty much. We haven't talked about probably the most Hitchcocky scene in this whole movie, because in many ways this movie isn't very Hitchcocky. Like, it's much more of a character study versus just a straight mystery thriller. The poster cracks me up. It just says suspense, sex, mystery on it. So God. You know what you're getting in for, right? It's just like, what? Subtle.
Yeah.
But the stealing of the money scene with the cleaning woman and the shoes and the wide shot. I'm a sucker for that, where you are seeing two things and both characters don't know the thing that you know, and so you as an audience member are like oh my god, what are you gonna do? Get out of there, Marnie, get out of there.
Oh no, the shoe's gonna fall.
Oh my god. Again, her femininity is what's going to entrap her. We get to the end of the movie and the mystery is revealed to us. We're back at the red brick house with the giant harbor and ship that is definitely in that scene.
It's definitely real.
Really. And there's a debate whether all of the really fake stuff was on purpose or if it was not. I like to think it was, just because it makes it more fun, but what are you going to do? But it is revealed that as a young child, Marnie's mother was a prostitute, and because they're on the harbor, sailors would come to her house, the white suits, and her... this is so inappropriate, but I just thought when she's like, stop, the colors!
The colors, stop the colors.
The colors, Duke, the colors!
The colors! Oh my god, that's so funny! Insensitive.
The colors, Duke! The colors!
I'm colorblind, kid.
That giant
hilarious
phallic tree just comes right on through the window. Dramatic.
Oh my god, that whole thing, right? Yeah, so that was the lightning storm. The lightning sets her off because there was a storm that night, I guess, too. And yeah, I love that there's a giant tree that crashes through the window and he's just kind of like, oh, it's okay.
Huh. He's like, that was the last of my wife's belongings.
Right?
Well, anyway.
Now, those were collected by my wife. She's dead.
That's why I'm like, maybe we need to be getting into what the fuck is going on with Mark Rutland. That's all I'm saying. Not to make it generational, but there could be some 50 Shades of Grey parallels here. A controlling, older, rich man.
Yeah.
This sort of inexperienced young woman.
I wish that was more
games
interesting.
They play. Oh yeah, I think there's a much more interesting movie in here somewhere that could be a masterpiece.
If all of the pieces fell into place, then it could happen. But I think even as we see with this, it was hard with a lot of the pieces in place. So it's a monumental task. But if it could be done, it would be spectacular.
Let's get Emerald Fennell on this as an adaptation, because I feel like that would be really fascinating. Because there was I was reading a lot of discussions about how this movie would be so much better if they just took the rape scene out. It ruins the whole thing. On some levels, it's like, yeah, that's not nice to see, obviously. But I think it's important to the plot and the reading into it, much like, did you see Promising Young Woman yet?
Not yet. I still really need to. I know.
Like,
I know.
You got to watch it. But I know everyone says that, but like you got to watch it. But I will not spoil what happens, but it's a complicated topic, but having it just be erased and taken out is not really a solution. And there was no other outcome really that was ever going to happen with this relationship, because he is the epitome of sexuality and masculinity, and she's, you know, this frigid woman. And so I feel like without that scene, that scene informs so many things, and whether or not, you know, it's appropriate or handled particularly well or all of the above, I think Emerald Fennell could really interpret this, and maybe, yes, I'm here for this. I am here for this.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I like it a
I
lot.
do too. Yeah, I like that. Let's put it out into the universe. The way that I just took it at face value, and I feel like that changes so much of it, of like he was tempted to cross the line.
Right.
But then didn't, and put the jacket on her. But if you read it as, no, he raped her, then...
I think it's open to interpretation to a certain extent, similar to the final scene where the trauma is revealed, where a young Bruce Dern, a strapping young sailor, has come to use the services of Marnie's mother, and she gets kicked out of bed and has to be scared from the storm, and they're going into her room to fuck, and she's upset by the lightning, and Bruce Dern comes out, and there's two ways to interpret this scene.
Now, you ain't afraid of a little bit of lightning, are you? Huh?
I want my mama. I don't want you. Let me go.
On some level, you can interpret it as Bruce Dern just comforting this scared young girl and trying to be like a nice guy, even though gross, you're paying like you're...
Right. You're like paying to fuck her mom,
you know,
and like whatever. It's a whole weird thing, but yeah.
It's a whole weird thing. But on some level, you can interpret it as he's just trying to be nice. And then on a different level, the mother interprets it as he's trying to, you know, like molest her. I think it's ambiguous, which allows more conversation.
Absolutely.
That is the trauma that is revealed. The mom attacks Bruce Dern. He falls on her dramatically. Her leg is cut. Marnie beats him over the head with an iron poker. You know,
a lot of death by iron poker. Both of these movies.
I think it's something people have around.
Sure.
You know, it's like, oh. I'm surprised it's not one of the clue objects. You know what I mean?
Right? A fire poker,
and fire poker.
Yeah.
But beats him to death, and the mom takes the blame, and Marnie regresses and represses it and forgets that it happened. You know, I thought this was a really fantastic, sort of cathartic, whether or not this gross man forced this to happen and all of the ickiness surrounding why and when and all of it, I think that they have a great scene together.
You must have loved me.
Well, you're the only thing in this world I ever did love.
The mom is like, this is my trauma that happened to me, but I'm so glad I got you out of it. But yeah, that whole monologue about the baseball or basketball sweater, broke my heart.
Oh, God, yeah.
So good.
I still got that old sweater. And I got you, Marnie.
This is one of the darkest Hitchcock movies, and that's saying a lot.
I left and I was like, wow, there was so much there, and yet not enough there almost, or, you know, almost not enough of a point of view. And that's where I think, like you said, if you have a modern director who had much more of a point of view and a statement, and probably a feminine one is what's required, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. I think it could be really great and fascinating. So there's something there, and there's a lot of skill and filmmaking in this, and talent and everything else. It's not bad, but it could have been better.
It's a movie to be discussed.
Yeah.
Truffaut, I was reading my Truffaut Hitchcock book, and he described it as a great flawed movie.
Yes.
And how a lot of movies that fit that description end up being cult classics. And I think this almost falls into that area. Like I said, it's the closest thing we're ever going to get to Hitchcock doing Showgirls. The more I think about Elizabeth Berkley's performance in Showgirls, the more I'm like, maybe she was fooling us all, and she really actually deserved an Oscar. I'm putting it out there.
And I think that's where the camp comes in as well. Such an earnest performance from all of them. It's the same thing with Mommie Dearest too, right?
It walks that really fine line. It's not all fun.
No.
There's dark shit going on, and I think a lot of times feminine, exaggerated fetish things are seen as camp, right? Oh, there's all these purses and hairdos and whatever. And I think probably that's because, women and gay men can see the camp for what it is, can engage with it more, and so that's what you focus on. But I would recommend it. I think this movie is fascinating.
Well, it's certainly, like you said, I mean, I think more than anything else, what it has going for it is the conversation. I could talk about this movie for a long, we could
keep talking about it. I mean, on some surface level, this movie is a woman desperately trying to escape the patriarchy and losing that battle.
Yeah.
On some level, that's the plot. And I want to watch that movie. Yeah. It's very similar to Stepford Wives, where you go, oh my God, get out of there, and the ending is so much more powerful. This also goes back to Promising Young Woman, because it's sort of gray and you can interpret it how you want, and it's not all happy and rosy and flowers.
Right.
I was reading a different thing that was saying it's like a reverse Cinderella story. She's presented with this rich, hot, available man that wants to marry her and give her clothes and dress her up, but she already has all these, she is independently from stealing, but she's a free woman who's saying fuck the patriarchy basically, and fuck this system, I'm living outside of your norms. And it is a movie about a woman being slowly caged into normalcy.
All of that is very true, and I think that's the best way to look at it. And that's just then again where I'm like, if it was framed with more intent by a different auteur who had a different perspective on it, and also probably the benefit of 50 or 60 years now of time, that could be really a tragic story. I mean, it is, but fascinating. Yeah. And probably more true, unfortunately, than, or more lived than you would hope.
I think that's why I connect with so many Hitchcock movies, because they show the fucked up world that we live in. But they're so incredibly aesthetically pleasing to me that I cannot turn away. Yeah. And it's that dichotomy of this horrifying thing is happening. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean? And so I think I'm such a visual person. That's why I just engage so much with his movies, even though there's dark ass shit going on.
But also the world is dark. It's not like everything is just a fantasy. And so it's fun that I think too, in his oeuvre, there's ones that are lighter and more fun, and there's ones that are darker and more fucked.
I'm the laziest girl in the world. I take pleasure leisurely, even when I kiss.
It's good shit.
It's so good. So anyway, this is part 1 of Hitchcocktober. I hope you watch his movies, discuss his movies. Fucking Edith Head, man. Edith fucking Head.
Edith Head.
There was also a really funny, one more thing, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
There was a really funny thing in that article that I'm gonna find about the vaginal purses, where she was just like, I mean, when you get Hitchcock and Head together, and then she was like,
Stupid. Anyway, happy Hitchcocktober. Subscribe. We have more to come, so look forward to that. And go to our Patreon to see the list so that you can watch ahead and follow along with us. Cheers!
Cheers!
Now, those were collected by my wife. She's dead.